Thank you, Speaker. I'm quite surprised that the Minister of Labour wasn't responding to this private member's bill today, seeing that the Minister is indeed in the House listening to this debate. I'll have to start off by saying I think the member for Essex has a different dictionary than I have and others when he uses the word that Bill 77 as enhancing fairness for employees. When I hear the term fairness, I think of freedom, justice. I think of privacy. I believe in due process, respect for democracy, things of that nature. And in this bill, it compels employers to provide personal information about employees to a third party who is not, who may be wishing to be having an agreement or a contract, but a third party with no ties to those employees or to the business that they're employed in. And I think that's a real dangerous slope to be on when a business can be compelled by a third party to release such private and important information. And it's not just the person's name, but also their address and contact information, their job classification, number of hours of work, and any other information they may deem appropriate to find. And this also doesn't have any safeguards in it whatsoever for protection of democratic ideals when it comes to secret ballots and the necessity for secret ballots voting on collective agreements. This allows telephone voting, online voting, but it doesn't prescribe any levels of security for those types of voting. It certainly can be left to significant potential abuse of the privacy and the results when there isn't prescribed methods to protect that privacy and that information. And I will say, the member spoke about this would protect employees from their employers during the certification process. I'd like to just mention to the member and to the House, it's not employees needing protection just from employers. Here's an article from March 14th in the Toronto Star where 13 members of LIUNA Local 183 are being ejected from their union cards being withheld, so they'll not be able to work on any construction projects. And that was followed by an earlier one in February where two others, there's been a number of fights and scuffles at LIUNA. And of course, I know the member knows this as he in his prior to politics was director of training at LIUNA, and maybe I should restate this just for the record. Unions are just another business. They're just another business, and we safeguard people by putting checks and balances in things, not by skewing the workplace or with legislation. And just I'll state for the record here, LIUNA, back in 1995, the U.S. Department of Justice prosecuted LIUNA bosses for racketeering and ties to organized crime. 35 officials were sentenced, 57 embezzlement charges, 46 criminal charges. And, to give organizations such as that blanket authority to go in and demand private information from individuals with no checks and balances on what they can do with it, we do allow and maybe actually create a situation where wrongdoing will happen. And I will state for the record as well, these processes for certification can and indeed are abused as the legislation sits today. Speak to Gary Oosterhoff at Oosterhoff Electric in Kingston, and he'll tell you about the tragedy of the certification process in his shop, or Good Mechanical in Smith Falls, Ontario, or Bergeron Contractors in Sudbury, or Skulland Electric in Almont, Ontario, and I can go on, Power Tech Electrical in Ottawa. All these people have been subjected to vigorous abuses in the certification processes that we have today, such as card-based certification. A bill like this will only exacerbate that problem. It will allow unions to have significant unchecked power over the information and the voting process in certification processes. I do think we do need to have fairness, but that fairness can only be achieved by respecting privacy, protecting freedom of choice, ensuring that due processes are prescribed within the legislation so that wrongdoing can be prevented. Thank you very much.